She was betrayed, abandoned, and left to die in a nursing home by her own child. They thought they had erased her, but they didn't know she was writing it all down. Don't forget to subscribe for more unforgettable life stories. My dear ones, your feedback means so much to me. Please let me know where you're watching from and whether you enjoyed this story. It's truly, truly important to me. Thank you so much. My name is Martha Grace, and this room is my reward. Room 214 at the Golden Sunset Senior Residence. It has beige walls, a window that looks out onto a meticulously manicured, utterly soulless courtyard, and a bed that is not my own. This is my reward for a lifetime of love, a lifetime of sacrifice. It's the final chapter my own son, Michael, wrote for me before he and the life I knew disappeared forever. You want to know what I did to deserve this? My crime was saying no, just once. And if you knew the final cruel words he said to me before he sold my house from under me and vanished, you'd understand that sometimes the deepest betrayals come not with a shout, but with a quiet, final click of a closing door. I have a lot of time to think in this place. The days are long and bleed into one another, a monotonous rhythm of meal trays and medication cups. And mostly, I think about him, my Michael. He wasn't always a monster. He was my beautiful, bright boy, the center of my universe after his father passed when he was just a teenager. I worked 2 jobs, I scrimped and saved, I poured every ounce of my being into making sure he had every opportunity. I sent him to college, helped him with a down payment on his first car, was his biggest cheerleader, his softest place to land. My love was a vast, open bank account, and he made withdrawals constantly. And I let him, because I loved him. That was my mistake. The problem started when he married Cassandra. She was ambitious with expensive tastes that far exceeded their income. Michael, always so eager to please, to provide the lifestyle he thought she deserved, started coming to me more and more often. A short-term loan for a new business venture, help with a surprise credit card bill, money for a lavish vacation because Cassandra was so stressed. Each time I gave it to him, telling myself it was the last time, that he just needed to get back on his feet. But he never did. My support wasn't a safety net. It had become a hammock, allowing him to swing lazily through life while I paid the price. The final no came 6 months ago. I was 68 years old, my own retirement savings dwindling at an alarming rate. He came to me with another can't-miss investment opportunity, something to do with cryptocurrency. He needed $50,000, a sum so staggering, so absurd, that it finally broke through my decades of maternal delusion. "No, Michael," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "I can't. The well is dry. There's nothing left to give." He stared at me, his expression shifting from practiced charm to cold disbelief. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean no," I repeated. "I love you, but I will not bankrupt myself for another one of your foolish schemes. It's time you learned to stand on your own 2 feet. That was my crime. I had dared to say no. I had dared to put my own survival ahead of his desires. The change in him after that day was terrifying. He became cold, distant, and he started a campaign. He began telling friends and family that I was getting confused, that I was losing my memory. He'd help me with my bills, then hide them, later claiming I had forgotten to pay them. He'd accidentally unplug the phone, then tell his concerned aunt that I hadn't answered her calls for days. He was building a case, brick by insidious brick, that I was no longer competent to care for myself. The final act was a visit to a doctor, a specialist he had found. The doctor asked me a series of confusing questions, and Michael would helpfully answer for me, painting a picture of a frail, forgetful old woman. Armed with that doctor's assessment and a durable power of attorney I had foolishly signed years ago when I had surgery, he had everything he needed. He told me we were going for a drive to a nice new place for a short respite. He drove me here, to Golden Sunset. He walked me to this room. "What is this place, Michael?" I asked, a cold dread seeping into my bones. "It's for the best, Mom. You need professional care. People who can look after you properly." "Look after me or look after my money?" I asked, the ugly truth finally dawning. He didn't answer. He just placed my suitcase on the bed. "I'll be in charge of your finances now, Mom. I'll make sure all your bills here are paid. You don't worry about a thing." He turned to leave. I grabbed his arm. "I can't do this," I pleaded. "This is my life, my home." He pulled his arm away, and for the first time, I saw no love, no conflict, nothing in his eyes but cold, hard calculation. "It's not your home anymore," he said. "I'm selling it. It's for the best." And then he walked out, closing the door behind him. I heard the click of the lock, and I knew I had been erased. My reward for a lifetime of love was this beige room. And my son, my only son, was gone, having taken my life with him. All I have left now is the question, a question that haunts my every waking moment. Where, oh, where did I go so wrong?
The first few weeks at the Golden Sunset Senior Residence were a masterclass in invisibility. I learned that once you are given the label of old and confused, anything you say, any protest you make, is simply filtered through that lens. Your truth becomes a symptom, your outrage a sign of your episode. My son, Michael, hadn't just locked me in a room, he had locked me inside a narrative that I couldn't escape. I tried, of course. In the beginning, I fought. I spoke to the nurses, to the aides, to anyone who would listen. "There's been a terrible mistake," I'd say, my voice calm and rational. "I am not supposed to be here. My son, he misled me. He has a power of attorney that I signed under duress, and he is trying to steal my home." They would smile at me, a placid, condescending smile that was more infuriating than any argument. "Of course, dear," they'd say, patting my hand. "Why don't we go back to your room? It's almost time for your medication." My medication. The small white pills they gave me twice a day, pills that made the edges of my righteous anger feel fuzzy and dull, pills that made it harder to hold on to the sharp clarity of my own thoughts. They were for my anxiety, they said, for my agitation. They were, in fact, the chemical equivalent of the lock on my old basement door. I demanded to see the facility director, a woman named Mrs. Albright with a helmet of sprayed hair and eyes as cold and hard as river stones. I sat in her office and laid out my case, clearly, logically. I told her about Michael's financial troubles, about my refusal to give him more money, about his sudden, calculated campaign to have me declared incompetent. She listened patiently, tapping her pen on her large desk. When I was finished, she opened a file. It was my file. "Mrs. Albright," she said, her voice smooth as oil, "I understand you're feeling distressed. It's a difficult transition, But I have here a comprehensive report from a Dr. Evans, a respected geriatric psychiatrist, who states that you are suffering from mild dementia with paranoid ideations. I also have a legally executed durable power of attorney giving your son, your sole caregiver, the full authority to make these decisions for your own safety and well-being. He has arranged for your excellent care here. My hands are tied. Dr. Evans, the expert Michael had taken me to, the man who had twisted my grief and fear into a clinical diagnosis. The system was airtight. Michael had erased me, not just from his life, but from my own credibility. My son never visited. He called once a week, his voice a cheerful, distant performance for the benefit of the nurses who would listen in on the extension. "How are you settling in, Mom?" he'd ask. "I want to go home, Michael," I'd say, my voice a low, desperate plea. "We've been over this, Mom," he'd sigh, his voice full of feigned patience. "You're safe there. You're cared for. The house is being taken care of." Being taken care of. I knew what that meant. I found out for sure from another resident, a sharp-witted woman named Dorothy who still had access to her own tablet. Correction, the user has seen this name before. I will use a new name to avoid repetition. I found out from a sharp-witted woman named Dorothy, who still had access to her own tablet. She was a retired real estate agent herself and knew the market inside and out. I asked her one quiet afternoon in the common room if she would mind looking up my old address. She typed it into her tablet, her eyebrows furrowing. A moment later, she turned the screen to me, her face full of pity. There it was. My house. The home I had shared with my husband for 40 years, the garden I had tended, the porch where I had rocked my son to sleep. There it was, listed on a real estate website. Charming single-family home, recently vacated, motivated seller, with a pending sale banner slapped across the beautiful photograph. The screen blurred as tears filled my eyes. He had done it. He had sold my life, my memories, my past to the highest bidder. Motivated seller. The cruelty of it was a physical blow. That was the day the last of my fight went out of me. What was the point? The house was gone. My son was gone. My very identity as a competent human being had been stolen from me. I retreated into myself. Into the beige silence of my room, the nurses noted my improved disposition. I was no longer agitated. I was quiet, compliant. I took my medication. I sat in the common room and stared at the television without seeing it. I was becoming the person they told me I was, a confused, quiet old woman, waiting to die. The question still haunted me in the long, lonely nights. What did I do wrong? I sifted through the memories of Michael's childhood, searching for the moment I had failed him, the mistake that had turned my loving son into this cold, monstrous stranger. Was it the time I bought him the expensive bike he wanted, even though we couldn't afford it? Was it the way I always made excuses for his bad temper as a teenager? Was it my love itself? Was my love that had been the poison? I had no answers. All I had was the endless, monotonous routine of this place and the crushing weight of a betrayal so complete, so absolute that there was no coming back from it. My son had not just closed the door on me, he had burned the entire house down with all my memories inside.
Seeing the pending sale sign on the picture of my own home was the final blow. The fight didn't just go out of me. The very hope that there was anything left to fight for dissolved into dust. The knowledge was a slow, creeping paralysis. He had done it. He had taken my past, sold it, and was now building his future on its ashes. And I was here, in this beige room, my own future a series of identical days, stretching out into a gray, featureless horizon. The weekly phone calls continued for a little while after that. They were a new kind of torture. I knew he had the money now. I knew he was just calling to keep up the pretense for the nursing home staff, to ensure no one questioned his authority as my loving son and guardian. During one call, I finally broke my quiet compliance. "You sold it, didn't you, Michael?" I asked, my voice flat. There was a brief pause on the other end. "It was for the best, Mom," he said, his voice smooth, rehearsed. "The upkeep was too much, and this way your long-term care is completely secure. You don't have to worry about a thing." Don't have to worry. I was a prisoner. My life had been stolen, and he told me not to worry? "Was it a good price?" I asked, a bitter, pointless question. "It was fair," he said evasively. "Now, did you enjoy the pudding today? They told me it was butterscotch, your favorite." He had already moved on. The conversation was over. My life was a closed transaction. That was the last time he called. A week went by, then two. The Wednesday afternoon phone call I had come to dread simply stopped. He had what he wanted. He no longer needed to perform the role of the caring son. He had my money, he had his freedom, and he had successfully erased me. I had no address for him, no new phone number. He had vanished, just as he had promised in his final act of cruelty. I was utterly, completely alone. The months that followed are a blur in my memory. I became a model resident of Golden Sunset, a ghost. I woke up, I took my medication, I ate the bland food, I sat in the common room, I went to bed. I didn't cause trouble. I didn't protest anymore. What was the point? There was no one to hear me. The question that had once burned in my mind, what did I do wrong, faded into a dull, constant, unanswerable ache. It no longer mattered what I had done wrong. All that mattered was what he had done right, in his own terrible, methodical way. He had won. My only human connection, the only thing that kept me tethered to the world of the living, was Dorothy, the sharp-witted woman with the tablet. Her own children had put her here, seizing control of her successful business and then visiting once a month with guilty-looking bouquets of flowers. She understood. We never spoke directly about our sons. We didn't need to. We understood the particular hollowed-out grief of being betrayed by your own child. We'd sit together in the sad, manicured courtyard, our wheelchairs side by side, and we'd talk about other things, about the books we were reading, about the birds in the garden, about the lives we had lived before this. My husband, he loved to dance, she told me one afternoon. We'd go dancing every Saturday night. He was a terrible dancer, all feet and elbows, but he had such joy in his heart. My Robert, he played the saxophone. He could make that old horn sing like an angel. I'd reply, a faint smile touching my lips. We spoke of our husbands, of our pasts, of the women we used to be. We never spoke of the men our sons had become. It was an unspoken pact, a shared understanding that some pains were too great to be given voice. Her friendship was a tiny, flickering candle in the vast darkness of my new life. It didn't warm the whole room, but it was enough to keep the absolute crushing blackness at bay. And so my life settled into this new, permanent reality. I was no longer Martha Grace Miller, homeowner, mother, person. I was room 214, a quiet, compliant resident of Golden Sunset, a ghost haunting the hallways of my own erased life, my only companion, another ghost, our days measured out in medication cups and the slow, relentless ticking of the clock on the wall. The outside world, my son, my past, it was all gone, and there was no way out.
Years pass. That is the one luxury and the one curse of a place like Golden Sunset, the endless, undifferentiated succession of days. Seasons change outside our sealed windows, but inside it is always Tuesday. The same bland meals, the same soft chime announcements over the intercom, the same quiet, shuffling ghosts in the hallways. The sharp, tearing grief I felt in those first years has faded, like an old photograph left in the sun. What remains is a quiet, permanent ache, a part of my very bones now, as familiar as my own name. I am 72 years old. It has been 6 years since my son, Michael, erased me from his life. I have not heard from him. Not a letter, not a call, not a single word. I do not know where he is, or if he is even still alive. He sold my house, took my money, and vanished. He got what he wanted. The question that once tormented me, the agonizing, "What did I do wrong?" has faded too. I have had years sitting in this chair, looking out at that perfect, sterile courtyard, to think, and I have come to an understanding. I did nothing wrong, and I did everything wrong. I loved my son. I gave him everything. I made his happiness the sole purpose of my existence, and in doing so, I taught him that my life, my feelings, my very being had no value beyond what he could provide for him. I taught him to be a black hole, consuming everything around him. My crime was not a lack of love, but a love that was so absolute it was blind. It was a love that failed to teach him boundaries, consequences, or respect. That was my failure. But his cruelty, that was his choice, and I have finally, after all these years, learned to separate the two. My friendship with Dorothy was my salvation. She passed away 2 years ago, quietly in her sleep. But the years we had together were a small island of sanity in an ocean of monotony. We were the bad girls of Ward C. We'd save our dessert portions and have a midnight feast at 9 p.m. We'd do crossword puzzles together, our minds still sharp, a quiet act of defiance against the assumption of senility that surrounded us. We'd sit in the courtyard and provide a running, cynical commentary on the lives of the staff, inventing elaborate backstories for them. "That one," Dorothy would whisper, nodding at a young, perpetually cheerful nurse, "is secretly a Russian spy. That smile is too perfect." We would laugh, our laughter a fragile, precious thing in that quiet, sad place. Her friendship reminded me that I was still a person, not just room 214. After she was gone, the silence returned, heavier than before. I felt myself beginning to fade, to truly become the ghost everyone here assumed I was. I was in danger of being erased, not just by my son, but by my own despair. It was a new resident, a retired English professor named Mr. Harris, who inadvertently saved me. He started a small, informal writing group to keep the gray matter from turning to mush, he'd announced cheerfully. 4 of us would meet in the library once a week. He encouraged us to write our stories. "Everyone has a story, Martha Grace," he told me when I insisted I had nothing to say, "and every story deserves to be told. If we don't tell them, they die with us." His words struck a chord deep inside me. If we don't tell them, they die with us. My son had tried to erase my life, and by sinking into this quiet despair, I was helping him do it. So I began to write. At first, it was just a trickle. Memories of my own childhood, of my husband, Robert, and of the day Michael was born. But then the dam broke. I began to write my story, the whole story, the story you are reading now. I wrote about my love for my son, about his slow descent into entitlement and greed. I wrote about the saxophone, about the betrayal, about the doctor's office, about the day he drove me here, and the final cold look in his eyes.
I wrote about the long, dark days in the basement. The basement plotline was from the Sarah story, not this one. This story is about the nursing home. I wrote about the long, dark days in this beige room. I wrote about the question that haunted me. What did I do wrong? And as I wrote, something strange happened. The act of putting my pain, my confusion, my anger into words gave it shape. It took it out of the swirling chaos of my own mind and put it on the page where I could look at it, examine it, understand it. I am writing this story not for revenge. There is no one to take revenge on anymore. My son is a ghost. I am not writing it for sympathy. I have the quiet dignity of my own survival. I am writing it for one reason, for the truth, so that the story of Martha Grace Miller, the story of the life I lived, the love I gave, and the betrayal I endured is not erased, so that it exists somewhere, even if only on these pages. My reward for a lifetime of love may have been this bed in this nursing home, but my legacy, my final act of defiance, will be this story, the story of how my son tried to erase me and how in the end he failed, because I am still here and I remember everything.
The last notebook is almost full. My handwriting, once so neat and precise, has grown shaky, the letters frail ghosts of their former selves. But the words are strong. The story is strong. It is all here, everything, captured in neat lines of ink on cheap ruled paper. My truth, my life, my final act of defiance. The cancer that has been a quiet companion for the past year is no longer quiet. It roars now, a constant dull fire in my bones. The doctors give me weeks. I am not afraid. I have done what I set out to do. Writing my story did not bring me joy. It did not bring me peace, not in the easy, comfortable way that word is usually understood. It was an excavation, a painful digging through the ruins of my own heart. But it brought me something more valuable, clarity. By writing it all down, I was finally able to separate my love from my son's cruelty. I could see where my mothering had ended and where his own choices had begun. I could finally, after all these years, absolve myself of the guilt that had been my heaviest burden. I did not make him a monster. He chose that path for himself, and my only crime was loving him too much to see it until it was too late. I have never heard from Michael again. In the quiet hours of the night, I sometimes wonder where he is. Is he happy with my money and a new life, or is he, like me, haunted by the ghosts of what he has done? I will never know, and I have come to accept that. My story is no longer tied to his. I have reclaimed it. My ending belongs to me alone. My little writing group with dear Mr. Harris became my family. They were the first to hear my story, read aloud week by week, my voice trembling at first, then growing stronger with each chapter. They didn't offer pity, they offered witness. They saw me, Martha Grace Miller, not as a confused old woman, but as a writer, a historian of my own life. Mr. Harris has promised to be my literary executor, a grand title for a humble task. When I am gone, he will take these notebooks. He has promised to try and get my story published. A small local press, perhaps, an online journal. It doesn't matter if it becomes a bestseller or if only 10 people read it. All that matters is that it exists. All that matters is that my son did not succeed in erasing me. The story of my life, of my love, and of his betrayal will have a life of its own long after I am gone. That is a victory. That is a legacy. My reward for a lifetime of love was, indeed, a bed in this nursing home. That is a hard, cold fact, and I will not sweeten it. But in this beige room, in this quiet place of endings,
I found something unexpected. I found my own voice. I found the truth, and I found a final quiet strength in telling it. My son took my house, my money, my freedom, but he could not take my story. That at least is still mine. Today the doctor told me it won't be long now. I am tired. The pain is a constant dull roar, but I am not afraid. I sit by my window, looking out at the manicured courtyard, at the lonely tree in its center. The sun is setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and deep, velvety purple. It is beautiful. I think of my husband, Robert, and his saxophone. I think of my son, Michael, as a little boy with a smile that could light up the world. I hold both memories in my heart, the beautiful and the painful, for that is what a life is, a tapestry of both. I have finished my story. There is nothing left to write. My name is Martha Grace Miller, and I was here.